Welcome to Talkin SEC. Writer, photographer, and producer Phillip Jordan discusses all the latest in college football in the Southeast with the best analyst around. Now from the southeast corner of Alabama, a state that knows sports, here is Phillip Jordan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Talking SEC. I am your host, Phillip Jordan from Last Word College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I am the in-studio host and producer for Dothan Woods Football, and changing things up on Monday's podcast from here on out. It won't just be me. It won't be a random guest. It will be my colleague at Last Word College Football. Obviously, he's representing the team he covers over there, the LSU Tigers, for Brandon Eisenman. Good friend. He'll be joining me on Mondays. We'll call these Mondays with BE here on the pod. So we got some. I hadn't been doing that Talk SEC last month really, but glad to be back. Glad to have Brandon on here every Monday. So Brandon, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I'm about to enjoy this. Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll keep. And my goal, any podcast to do from here on out, is keep it at 30 minutes because I can get long winded. And I've let these things go too long sometimes. Of course, y'all guys know you can follow me on social media, P. Jordan SEC, podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, all that good stuff. And I haven't got behind the microphone. Well, you got a little taste of it last week when I put up my interview with John Vogel. We talked some more draft-related stuff. But we're going to get into Saban versus for Jimbo here. We had SEC spring meetings last week. I know that was one of the good things a few weeks ago. It was on May 18th on a Wednesday night when Nick Saban said about Texas A&M, about NIL, all that stuff. We're gonna get into all that. We're gonna have a discussion on our thoughts on what's going on with all of that. But that was good for us, Brandon, though, because not only for us as writers, but just college football fans. We're not used to having storylines in May like that. But Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher, they brought the goods.
Yeah, they certainly did. You know, after spring ball was over, typically you don't get a lot of storylines, but hey, leave it to two of the best coaches in the SEC, you know, to bring us some really good storylines.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And a lot of people listen to this and say, why you guys, that was 2 weeks ago. But look, like I said, I hadn't really got the opportunity to really dive into this since it happened. Took a few weeks off there. But I want to play some clips, kind of rehash a little bit of what happened between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. So first up, I'm going to play just about 38 seconds of what Nick Saban said when he was basically talking to boosters, fundraisers, people with money in Birmingham and Tuscaloosa area.
Money to get players. And you've read about them. You know who they are. I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it.
So I remember seeing that when Nick Saban said that. And I remember saying, okay, this is probably not going to go over well with Jimbo Fisher. Because if everybody remembers, and I talked about it here on the podcast, after signing day, Lane Kiffin had some comments pointed toward A&M, and he didn't say A&M, but we all know who he was talking about. We talked about somebody has salary cap. I think Sliced Bread, whoever Sliced Bread is, maybe Nick Saban is Sliced Bread. Maybe that was the from Bro Bible. Brandon, have you ever read Bro Bible, by the way?
No, I have not.
I'll just like to say I'd like to know what's the meaning behind Bro Bible, the name. But anyways, Lane Kiffin made some comments, and then Jimbo Fisher responded to it. And now this happened with Nick Saban, you know, and this we'll jump into SEC spring meetings and how this ties into that. What was your reaction to that? Because I heard it first. I said, "Whoa, maybe Saban. What's Saban doing here?" But then the more you think about it, this is Nick Saban. He does not say anything without there being purpose behind it. He was not really talking to Nick Saban, and even at that event, he also said something about Jackson State and Deion Sanders, what they were doing, NIL. But I took that as Nick Saban say, "Hey, we finished second. NIL is here," because if you listen to the whole speech or the whole talk he gave about that, he's not anti NIL. He didn't accuse anybody of cheating, But he also did throw it out there. This is where we're at college football. I think he was seeing a message to the money makers, the boosters, the people with influence in Alabama that, hey, y'all going to have to get some more money because I don't like being number 2. That's what Nick Saban's about. He's about being number 1. So that was what I took away just from, a couple weeks ago, what Nick Saban said.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. That's pretty much the same thing I took away. Is that his message was pretty much to the boosters. And I mean, Saban's been at Bama since what, 06, 07? He definitely doesn't like finishing second. I mean, look at all the, SEC titles and national championships and number 1 rankings and, top recruiting classes, things like that. But furthermore to that, Phillip, and I know we're going to get into this about Jimbo, but what both of them said about kind of each other in a school perspective and football perspective and NIL deals and stuff like that. It was kind of crazy to see them kind of go back and forth at each other like that there for a little bit.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's play the audio, a little bit of what Jimbo Fisher said the very next day.
Despicable that somebody can say things about somebody and an organization. More importantly, 17-year-old kids. You're taking shots at 17-year-old kids and their families. That they broke state laws. That they're all money. We bought every player on this group. We never bought anybody. No rules were broken. Nothing was done wrong. It was all and the way we do things, the ethics in which we do things. And these families, it's despicable that a reputable head coach can come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way. The narcissist in him doesn't allow those things to happen. And it's ridiculous. But when he's not on top and the parity in college football he's been talking about, go talk to coaches who coach for him. You'll find out all the parity. Go dig into wherever he's been. You can find out anything. And it's a shame that you got to sit here and defend 17-year-old kids and families and Texas A&M because we do things right. We're always going to do things right. But we're always going to be here.
So, look, and there's so many people that have talked about this, and we're rehashing a lot of stuff here. But for this audience, like I said, once again, repeating myself, had thought about this. That was my thing, and me and you talked. We talked all the time, and I told you I thought Jimbo Fisher. I don't know where he was getting the allegations that Nick Saban said he cheated. Nick Saban never said anybody cheated. He just talked about. And he said afterwards, and he said it last week at the SEC spring meetings, that he should not have mentioned anyone's name. And he's going to get tired of asking the answer to this question too. But with Jimbo, to me, Jimbo seems very defensive on the whole situation, if you ask me, because he constantly said, we didn't do anything wrong. Well, Nick Saban never said you did anything wrong. Lane Kiffin never said you did anything wrong. But there's coaches around that are obviously have an issue with not NIL particular, but that there's no rules. It's the wild, wild west. Last week, Billy Napier, Florida's new head coach, said it's like we're college football has no laws right now. There's no regulation on this. So Jimbo got defensive to me, then throwing all the allegations. And they say, which look, a lot of people have speculated. They wondered the recruiting practices at Alabama over the Nick Saban era. I don't know if we can get into that or not, but that to me is what it is. He's defensive, but all these other coaches, I think Jimbo Fisher probably feels the same way. If you watch the whole press conference, he said he wishes there was some kind of uniform rule on how to handle NIL with what's going on right now. But, looking back 2 weeks ago, what was your response to Jimbo Fisher?
Yeah, I thought he was getting defensive too. And look, calling Saban a narcissist just didn't sit right with me. That's a guy that you've coached under, that you've known for a long time, and to throw a jab at him like that was just that was way out of context for me. Look, you can get defensive about that kind of stuff, but you really didn't have to take it that far.
Yeah, and my thing is too, if you want to start throwing sand that way, someone might throw some sand your way, because if there are some things going on, or maybe not at A&M, maybe Jimbo Fisher, maybe there's some stuff that went on in Tallahassee we're not too sure about. I mean, that was a really loaded team in Tallahassee he had 2013 when they won the national championship. So I would, I think there's kind of like a rule among thieves almost with coaches. You don't do that. You don't throw one under the bus saying they did that, did this. And who knows, but these two, it's going to be very interesting on October 8th when these two teams play. Obviously, A&M upset them last year, so Alabama was already looking for revenge from the upset of last season. And now you add on to the fact now that this is going on. Maybe the players seem offended by what Nick Saban said. I don't know. I don't know how that plays in the locker room. But now these two, to me, it's the most anticipated matchup of the SEC football season is Texas A&M and Alabama.
Yeah, I certainly think so, especially now with, the two coaches going back and forth. Phillip, speaking of that game in October, do you think we see a handshake between Saban and Fisher before and or after the game?
I don't know. Well, you see, we're talking here in June, and this happened in May. I know during that whole deal, Jimbo Fisher talked about, well, he's called. I'm not talking to him. They're mad at each other. More Jimbo mad at Saban, I think. There's a lot of time between now and then. We know game day is going to be there. I say unless something crazy happens, these two teams have losses. But I have a feeling game day is going to be there. CBS is going to hype it up. ESPN is going to. I mean, everybody is going to be hyping this thing up. I don't know. That's going to be the interesting part. Do they even meet each other before the game, like at midfield? You know how you always see coaches talking to each other before the game and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Do they even do that? And then I think both of them, whoever wins, regardless, they'll shake each other's hand at the end. But it'll be a very quick and go tend to your business. From where these two are at right now, especially on the Jimbo Fisher side, I don't see much of a friendly handshake going on between these two. And apparently, obviously, Jimbo is alluded to, and later in that press conference, he got asked a question. He said, "There's a reason why I never went and worked for him again." For people out there that maybe not know, when Nick Saban first got to Alabama, Jimbo was still at LSU.
Yep.
And Nick Saban wanted him to be his office coordinator. He turned it down. Like I said, he said there's a reason why he's never worked for him again. So I feel like maybe something has been also brought to light with this, that maybe there's a lot of, especially on the Jimbo Fisher side of thing, some ill will towards Nick Saban, because not the same. Lane takes shots at Nick Saban, but there's respect. He still likes Nick Saban. I mean, resurrected his career. Kirby and Nick Saban, there's mutual respect there, and some other former assistants. It does feel like it's very heated between Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, I certainly think it is, especially after all this.
Yeah, this whole thing has just brought all this to light between these two. And, going into – so now we can jump into the SEC spring meetings that were last week. And Pat Smith tweeted us out. I wanted to put this up on the screen for the YouTube audience. Check this out. Oh, and by the way, the Nick Saban audio came from AL.com for people who only listen to the podcast. And the Jimbo Fisher audio came from his press conference. That was from the Texas A&M Athletics YouTube page. But here is Pat Smith tweeted out last week as he was there at spring meetings. This is the arranged seating chart for the SEC coaches at spring meetings. So I really hope you're watching on YouTube, but for the audio only audience, I think we can kind of describe what we're seeing here. So, Brandon, I do notice up top you had Eli Drinkowitz, Mike Leach, and Lane Kiffin sitting next to each other, those three. So that's an interesting group. I know Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach like each other so far. The rivalry hasn't caused any hatred between them two. I wonder what kind of conversations were being had between Eli Drinkowitz and Mike Leach when I look at that kind of list right there.
Yeah, I want to know that too. Kind of interested.
Then your coach, Brian Kelly, Mark Stoops, and Kirby Smart were kind of paired up together on their part of the table. Mark Stoops probably thinking, well, I'm going to finish second to this guy. And Brian Kelly Brian Kelly, he's just got to be a guy seeing all this drama with the coaches. He's going to say, wow, what did I get myself into? But also this was a first for Brian Kelly. And I like with him, this is the first time he's ever had to deal with a conference commissioner in a while, because at Notre Dame, he didn't have that back to his Cincinnati days. So new territory for Brian Kelly with the drama, just learning what, he's going to get more of it in July, SEC Media Days, and plus the commissioner thing, having to deal with a commissioner. It's a completely new ballgame for Brian Kelly.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I kind of feel like he's enjoying this a little bit.
Yeah, he's probably got to be just take a seat back and just kind of figure things out. Then you got on the right-hand side of the seat, you had Billy Napier, Brian Harsin. This might be his last SEC spring meetings. Sam Pittman, who just got a new contract, and Nick Saban. And then on the other side, he had Shane Beamer, Josh Heupel, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. They were on that side. So, and I'm telling you all this, Jimbo Fisher was far away. He was between David Cutcliffe, who's now like a special assistant to the commissioner, William King in the middle. So, and I think I heard somebody said that Jimbo Fisher was separate because he's like the head or whatever. But I have a feeling there was no way they were going to put Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher next to each other because if those two had, you're an MMA guy. If you were to handicap those two having a fight, that's for saying, and I'm not condoning these two fighting. I'm just having some fun here. Who would you go with? I mean, Saban's old. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. He looks good for a 70-year-old man. If I make it that old, I hope I do look that good at 70. A little bit more hair, but I still hope I look that good at 70. But he is 70 years old. You know, Jimbo's in his 50s. I mean, neither one of them are spring chickens, but you know, kind of wonder who would take that fight.
Man, you know, I think I'm gonna have to take Jimbo. Not really just because he's younger, but I think if, like, hypothetically speaking, if you ever like put them in that situation, I just feel like Fisher would take it. I really do. I think Saban would get too tired out a little too quick.
Yeah, he'd have to end it pretty quickly. I mean, it would have to be a quick knockout on his side. But, you know, and all joking aside, when we go to what's being said with these coaches, and it's back to NIL, I believe there does need to be some uniform rules on this. But as Jimbo Fisher has said multiple times, that's more of the government, Congress. And look, let's be honest, I do believe they got more important things than fixing college football right now. There's a lot of bigger issues going on in this country than that. But that is the space we're in, talking about college football, college athletics, but also the transfer portal. And I think that's the worst part about this for coaches and fans. A lot of fans don't like it. I put on Facebook about a month ago, how do you feel about where college football is heading? I put it on Twitter as a poll too. Pretty much everybody said they do not like where it's headed. It does not look like what they are used to seeing. And it's not just that we have NIL that came in there right at the same time the transfer portal hit big. So now, and I think that's a problem too, because now players are saying, well, if you don't give me the NIL deal that I want, I don't get the money that I want, I'll just hit the transfer portal. And that's causing a lot more problems. That's why there's got to be some way to fix this, because it's like it's free agency without a deadline. It's free agency without salary cap. It's a lot of problems for college football. I don't know what the solution is, though. I don't know how do you fix where we're at. I've always been about players getting compensated. I feel like they deserve that. The football players and basketball players. The money that are coming into those two sports, and only the coaches really were getting a big piece of the pie. I've always thought the players should get some. I don't think they should be millionaires by any stretch of the imagination. That's for professionals. But at the same time, I've always been for players being compensated. But I also know when I look at this for coaches, this has got to be a headache, because not only do you have to recruit new guys, you also have to go out and get, keep your own guys. You have to re-recruit your own players every year. Auburn's had to do that 2 straight years with Tank Bigsby. 2 straight years, Georgia has tried to pull him from Auburn. They've been able to keep him, and that's credit to Brian Harsin. And so that's the big deal here. And also, another issue I have with this, it seems like the guys getting the NIL deals are the recruits. They're the ones getting the biggest deals, and I don't like that either. Why aren't the players that proven what they are on the field getting the bigger amount of money? So there's just a lot of issues with this. I mean, we're trying to keep this podcast at 30 minutes. So, I mean, we could probably do a whole hour on this, but it's just one of those things. College football is going to have to fix this. Something's going to happen. Either the NCAA is going to have to get off their butts and actually do something. I mean, what is the NCAA right now? A bunch of fat cats sitting in the office not doing anything. Or we're just going to have to get the biggest programs in the country, pull out of the NCAA, and just kind of start their own deal and create one rule where it's equal for everybody. It's just, I don't know, something to me just has to be done to get this whole thing squared away, fair, and just kind of get it making sense.
Yeah, exactly. And, Phillip, you talked about recruiting, and I'll just start there. It seems like recruiting is kind of taking over with this NIL thing. Like, take a 5-star recruit, for instance, that has offers from all over the country. All right, say Alabama, Ohio State, Texas A&M, Florida, whoever you want to throw in there. Whoever that player feels he can get the most NIL deal money from, that's where they're going to go from now on. They're not going to go for the coaches. They're not going to go for the school. Like, I don't think they will. I think it's all going, starting now and in the future, it's going to be all about, the NIL money because they want to go make the most money wherever they can. And if they go to the NFL at the next level, then, they're going to make more money there. But you're basically setting up to where, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, maybe not that long, 10, 15 years or so, like, there have been instances where, like, everybody knows players were getting paid, secretly under the table, whatever the case may be, and everybody's been, vouching for college athletes to be able to get paid for so many years, and now it's finally happening, but it's starting to kind of spiral out of control when you got the transfer portal. It's affecting recruiting. It's affecting so many aspects of the game that you've got to come up with something to figure out how to, not make it chaotic or it's going to get way out of hand. And then everybody's going to try to depart from the NCAA, which at some point I think will end up happening.
Yeah, because the NCAA, they're just useless right now with everything. I mean, they're just sitting there not doing anything. Like I said, we could probably go on like this for about an hour. But I did want to touch on, before we get out of here, we need to touch on a couple things. I'm for this. SEC looks like when Texas and Oklahoma comes in, they're going to get rid of divisions, which I'm all for. I was never a fan of the pod thought. I just didn't like it. I was not a fan of the 4 pods. I'll actually like, now, obviously, how you do that. Now, there's 2 models that's really been thrown out a lot. It's their 8-game model where you play one permanent opponent for, like, team I cover at last word, Auburn, Alabama. That will be the permanent there. And then you have like a rotation of the next 7 on your schedule. Then there's the 9-game schedule, which looks a 3 and 6 model, where you have 3 permanent opponents and then a rotation of the 6. I like this better, just because in the SEC, most teams have more than one rival, and you don't want to see certain games go away. Now, I would imagine certain teams in the conference, the ones more that are always in the middle toward the bottom of the conference, they may want to go with the 1 and 7, because then you only play 8. Then you still got the 4 non-conference games. It's easier to get to 6 wins in a bowl game that way. You go to the 9-game conference model, it's going to be harder. You only got 3 non-conference games. Some of these teams like Florida, South Carolina, Kentucky, they play teams, ACC teams, as a rivalry game. And then, of course, if you add in another big opponent, which a lot of people are doing in the playoff era, that makes it harder. I'm for the 3 and 6 model. Which of the 2? I mean, that's one I like. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think the 3 and 6 model would be better too. I'm trying to adjust my phone here. Sorry. But I think the 3 and 6 model would be better. I think going to a 9-game conference schedule should have already been done anyway. But if you're going to add in 2 more teams, just go ahead and do that. The whole pod system thing, I fully agree with you. I don't really like it. I think it would be kind of difficult to do that anyway, because you would have to figure out so many, ways to make that work. Like, if you've got, Missouri all the way in Missouri, and they're in the East, division right now, for instance, and then you've got like LSU and A&M, and now Texas and Oklahoma, and then Arkansas and everybody else. Like, how would you do a pod system? I don't really see how it would work.
Yeah, for everybody out there, go ahead and we're going to jump back into the conversation. My microphone was malfunctioning, so if you saw me fumbling around while Brandon was talking, I heard everything he said. We're on agreement on that, but had little technical difficulties. Happens sometimes on this low budget operation we have here on the Phillip Jordan Talking SEC stuff. So something I wanted to do with you, while we're doing that, and let me put my face back on the screen with Brandon so y'all can y'all heard me, but y'all didn't see me. Anyways, hey, it had been in a while. We're knocking off the rust here. Now, we were going to talk about, for the teams we cover, that's where we were going to go with this. So look, at some point I will go through and I'll probably do a segment on the other team. So for LSU, the 3 permanent opponents, who do you think they should beat? Now, I'm going to go ahead and guess 2 of them, Alabama and Texas A&M. But am I wrong? And if I am, who are the 3?
On one of them, yes. My three, and this is just my own personal opinion, just because of the rivalry standpoint and everything else. Definitely Arkansas because the battle for the Golden Boot, that's a really big game every year. Alabama, obviously, that's, most years a hyped up game. Both teams are typically pretty good. And then my third team is Florida. And the reason I picked Florida is I know it's a cross divisional opponent, but it's been so permanent for so long that rivalry, the rivalry between LSU and Florida has gotten so heated, over the years that I think you just have to keep that as a permanent opponent between the two.
Okay. Well, me for Auburn, Alabama, Georgia. Now, I'm not going with rivalry, who should be their third permanent opponent. If Auburn's playing Alabama and Georgia every single year, those, and for the foreseeable future, we know those are going to be the best two teams, or two of the best two teams, not only in the SEC, but in all college football. You're probably going to laugh, and the audience is going to say, well, you're just trying to get an easy win. Vanderbilt. Auburn should get to play Vanderbilt every year just because the two teams they would have to play. They're two biggest rivals, two of the biggest rivalries in all college football. Georgia, that's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Auburn, Alabama, my opinion, the best rivalry in college football. More intense every year with those two teams, the Iron Bowl. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. Not really a rival for Auburn to play every year, but somebody that they should get on a consistent basis. I feel like maybe that's what would have happened in the pod system. Now, if I was just to pick a third rival for them to play every single year, just from the games I think have been classics, I think LSU. When Auburn and LSU have had some really good games over the last 15, 20 years. But scheduling wise, if we want competitive balance, competitive fairness in the conference, I think Auburn should get Vanderbilt. Is there a team that not necessarily is a rival for LSU, just to kind of balance things out, you would add in there if you could take one of them out?
Yeah, I'll stoop a little low here. I'll go Vanderbilt too. You could even throw Missouri, maybe even South Carolina. I mean, just somebody that
David Knight, he does not mean it. He does not mean it.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, but if you're gonna throw in somebody that, and if you're gonna do this for every single team in the conference, then go ahead. But for LSU and Auburn, for their instance, if you're having to play, the likes of Alabama, Florida, A&M every year, you need that, kind of, I'm not gonna say a cupcake game, but more of a, and not even a gimme game, just kind of a lower tier conference team, maybe to boost your, eligibility for a bowl game, or something. So Vanderbilt, obvious choice. Missouri, I mean, they're okay at times. And the South Carolina, they've upset teams before. But I mean, if I was commissioner of the SEC or athletic director at LSU or Auburn, I'm probably picking one of those teams.
Yeah, you know what the common denominator of all these teams we mentioned? They're
Vanderbilt?
in the East. They're in the East.
Yeah, they are. They're all in the East. Yeah,
the East is the least.
Because the West is always stacked most of the time.
Yeah, it is rightly, since Tennessee and Florida are not what they once were, which Tennessee hasn't been what they once were in about 20 years. They're getting better. I'm not ready to jump on the Josh Heupel bandwagon quite yet. So one of the exciting times, really, I think, is when I know college football season is getting close, is when the preseason magazines start coming out. And we got our first one. Lindy's magazine is out. Trying to work out getting somebody from Lindy's on the podcast here soon, like we usually do here on any podcast that I do. But we'll see. I'll let you guys update on that. If you see another podcast this week, it's going to be somebody from Lindy's. I'll just tell you that right now. So real quickly, they put out, they have their top 25 like everybody else does. I have felt since the season ended that the three best teams going into this year were going to be Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. I was not sure on 4. Now they've got Clemson at 4. Your favorite team, Texas A&M, at 5. I know you've got some issues with A&M at where they may be, but I'm okay with that. I know Clemson offensive line has issues. I watched the spring game. I don't think DJ's that good of a quarterback, and Brandon's gonna pick at me because I say his first name because I cannot say his last name. I will admit that here on the podcast. Michigan at 6. I don't think Michigan's gonna be. I think Michigan loses 2 or 3 games. I think that was just they got magic in a bottle last season. I do not think they repeat that. They're not going to do what they did last year, mainly because they lost their 2 big pass rushers. Utah 7, Notre Dame 8. We'll see with Freeman, first year's head coach. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. I wouldn't be shocked if Oklahoma's the 4th team. I know they lost a lot, but they got talent. Venables. I mean, Oklahoma's always good. So that's kind of, that's where they have it. And it kind of seems like the top 3 is going to be the same for everybody. But it's, to me, after 1, 2, and 3, there's a big drop off. And it's SEC pod, so other SEC teams in their top 25. They do have Arkansas at 13. I think a lot of people expecting big things out of them. Then you do have Ole Miss at 17. A lot of transfers, but Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's got talent there. And Kentucky at 24. And a future SEC team, of course, Texas. Texas is number 25. But that's kind of where they've got things there, SEC-wise, just the order. Georgia, Alabama 1. And I agree with it. I think Auburn's going to finish last in the West. They have LSU at 5. But just, as we kind of close things up, Brandon, any thoughts on that early top 25 for Lindy Sports?
Yeah. I just have one giant issue. Just one. Why?
Just one.
Why?
You don't
Why?
have more than one?
I mean, yeah, kind of, but really just the big one. And I've told you this many, many times. I've told a lot of people this. I'm not buying into the hype of Texas A&M in 2022. I'm not. Sure, you can have the number 1 recruiting class. You can pay them all this NIL money. Your head coach can talk smack to, the greatest coach in college football. But you have all these 5-star recruits. You got the number 1 recruiting class to do what? Just go 8-4 and go back to the Duke's Mayo Bowl or Outback Bowl, Gator Bowl, whatever. I mean, I'm not buying the hype. And look, A&M can prove me wrong, but I'm just not buying into it. And then, I don't really have a problem with the second one, but LSU not being in there, whatever. They had a horrible season last year. I didn't expect them to be ranked anywhere at anybody's top 25 for the preseason.
A&M comes out of quarterback. Haynes King, for a little bit I've seen of him. I mean, he got hurt the second game last year. I think it was second game against Colorado. But the first game of the year last year, he threw some bad passes, and he did the same thing in spring. I think Max Johnson is the guy. Can Jimbo Fisher get that talent out of him? I think they've got everything else. I mean, A&M's got plenty of talent. They got to work some stuff on the offensive line, but that's the thing. Quarterback. Can they have consistent quarterback play? Zach Calzada played great against Alabama last year, but he was up and down most of the year. They're going to have consistent quarterback play. And heck, in 2020, when they lost to one game, which was to Alabama, when they got blown out by 52-24, I think that was the score. Kellen Mond was not consistent that year. So until A&M has consistent quarterback play, I think that's what's going to hold them back. They're going to be a really good team, a top 10 team most years, because if they keep bringing in the talent that they're bringing in under Jimbo Fisher, but until they get that quarterback situation straightened out, I just don't see them as a national championship team. And I don't think Max Johnson is a national championship quarterback. And if people say, well, Stetson Bennett, look, I'll take Stetson Bennett over Max Johnson every day and twice on Sunday.
Yeah, I fully agree. Look, as an LSU guy, Johnson was there. I'm just going to throw this out there real quick. Had Miles Brennan not gotten hurt before the season last year, Max Johnson would not have played a lot. He wouldn't have.
He wouldn't have started.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And now, I mean, he left, went to A&M. I think, presumably right now here in June, I think Johnson's going to win the starting job there. But you're exactly right, Phillip. He's not a national championship caliber quarterback. And I don't think A&M's a national championship caliber team. I mean, you're playing in the best conference in the country. You got to go to Tuscaloosa in October with all the talk that's been going on and everything. You still got to play Auburn. And I don't know what their schedule is. I don't know if they get Georgia or Florida or whoever from the East this year. But if Arkansas is on the rise, you got to play them. You got to play LSU. I mean, that's a toss-up game. So I don't see why A&M is ranked so high. Maybe it's because of their recruiting class, the way they finished last year, but I'm not buying the hype at all.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm not buying the hype. It's just I got to see it. I got to see the quarter. I got to see it on the field. And it's just gonna. It's kind of like how I feel at Tennessee. I got to wait and see. So I think that we've hit 35 minutes, which there's some technical difficulties in there I'm going to cut out, so it may be closer to the 30. I was planning on hoping for here today. Me and Brandon will be doing this every Monday. It may be later on Mondays when we get into the football season, but we'll kind of iron that out. But here in the off season, we'll try to do these on Sunday nights and drop them on Monday morning. for you guys, me and Brandon. Of course, we're on YouTube as well, so check us out there if you want to. Apple Podcast, leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. And also YouTube, leave a comment on one of the videos, either on the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel or the Talking SEC YouTube channel, and I'll read that on a future edition as well. And Brandon, before you got here, because you are running out of daylight, you are actually doing this from your car. You are getting pretty hard to see at this moment, so that's another reason why we his light's not even working in the car.
Oh well, I tried.
Failed attempt, but 100% on the effort there. But anyways, everybody want to check you out. Where can they find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Eisenman. You can also follow me on my work over at Last Word on College Football, covering LSU. My once in a blue moon LSU breakdown podcast that, I keep telling myself that, me and my dad are going to start back, but just haven't gotten to it yet. And hopefully on next week's episode, you can find me actually in my room on the laptop with my microphone doing this instead of sitting in my car. So a little bit more lighting next week.
He's got one like this, guys. He just hasn't used it yet.
Just like it. Yeah, just haven't really configured with it yet. Got to do that this upcoming week, though, before we record next weekend. So I'll have better lighting next week.
Yeah, and hopefully yours doesn't malfunction like mine did tonight at one point. It was a buzzing sound in my ears. I could not hear a word Brandon was saying when he was breaking down the 3 and 6 model. So that we're at the rails. Of course, you guys know you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. And I appreciate you guys listening. Brandon, we will reconvene next Sunday night when we do this again. And as always, everybody, let kindness be your compass. And we will talk to you guys later on down the road.
Thank you for listening to Talkin' SEC. Follow Phillip on social media at PJordanSEC and the show at Talkin' SEC Pod. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time when we're talking SEC.